Welcome to the Influence Factory podcast. This program is dedicated to support professionals who have a desire to develop their digital business influence so they can navigate through a fast-paced, constantly growing digital world. We invite newcomers as well as our family of business influencers to a place to play, share ideas, questions, tips, and guidance with other thought leaders around the globe. Sit back and enjoy our program with our host Dean Delisle as he interviews guests. News and commentary is provided by Kate Hassett and Jackson Delisle. Power Move lessons are provided by the Influencer Marketing Department at Social Jack. And production, editing, and distribution is provided by the Social Jack production team.
I'd like to announce our upcoming guest here. I am so excited to have Chris on with us today. So this week's influencer guest is an experienced camera-first communicator. So he's going to be on camera here, working mainly with nonprofits. Since visiting nonprofits in all 50 states and all 100 days in the summer of 2015, throughout the summer, he's partnered with brands like Humana, Big Brothers, Big Sisters of America, Salvation Army to leverage authentic video to drive measurable objectives. And he's been featured on all the major news channels. Please welcome the CEO of I Am Here, Chris Strub. How's it going, buddy?
It's going fantastic. Thanks for the awesome introduction. I feel like I need a little round of applause after that read-in. That was great.
And he's a Cubs fan in South Carolina.
Like I'm running into Wrigley Field, running up against the Ivy. Dean, it's so great to be here. In light of, this month I'm traveling. We're actually traveling to the same conference in a couple weeks to St. Louis during baseball season. And then I'll actually be back in St. Louis again for some of my influencer work on May 1st with Give STL Day. So it's a nice breath of again, that Ivy flavored fresh air to be joining the Delisle family here.
And the cool thing is we met at Social Media Strategy Summit. And the other weird coincidence is we just found out like moments ago, we're going to be at MDMC together in St. Louis.
That's right. Just 2 weeks.
That's so cool.
2 weeks from today.
That's so cool. So we're like, does that make us, let's see, conference junkies, right? So
oh, absolutely. I think all of my friends would call me a conference junkie. That's for sure. And I see you guys bopping around all the time too. It's a lot of fun though to make those connections.
Well, and I actually like, I think you said it best. MDMC is a new one for me. You've been there the last few years. And I think any place that feels collaborative, where people are willing to share. That was the cool thing when I met you at SMSS. You were like, I didn't just, get a signed copy of your book at that time, but you explained to me and told me exactly what you were doing, how you were doing it, what was working, what's not working. And here we're all about the power of authenticity. So we love hearing that, about, how people, how do you deal with this? How do you deal with that? And, maybe if this isn't working, we try this. So that's what I love. So.
And I love that idea of talking through some of that tinkering and that experimentation, right? And again, people might get the impression that as an influencer in the space for a few years that we have it all figured out. And that just couldn't be further from the case, right? The whole idea, for me at least, of being an influencer is being willing to experiment and willing to try new things and partnering with those brands that say, yeah, let's give this a shot and see how it works. Then figure out what works and figure out how to patch it together and make it work better the next time. So it's an exciting time.
And I can honestly say that I haven't interviewed anyone that's won a mascot race in a giant inflatable chicken suit. So now, can I find that video? There
are stills that may or may not exist on my Facebook page. I don't know if the Binghamton Mets preserve the video, but that's a lot of fun there. Life is about having those little moments that stand out to you. And when Jackson sent over that email, I was like, I think that's the one. I think that's the one that stands out to me.
Right. Absolutely. So listen, you have this new film, and then we want to get back into your story, but I'm just so excited for you about this film. What can you tell us about the film?
So, back in the summer of 2015, I took a road trip to work with nonprofits in all 50 US states in 100 days. You mentioned the book, which is 50 States, 100 Days, the book. And the book came out back in November 2015. And then last year, I ended up meeting at, you mentioned being a conference junkie. I ran into a gentleman named Ross Woods at MDMC. We became very close friends. He's a storyteller and a video producer based out of Indianapolis. And Ross said, hey, Chris, we should put together a film about this adventure. You have this really incredible story. And, I feel like this one missing piece for you is that high level video production quality, right? People that are familiar with my story know that I like to walk around. You mentioned being a camera first contributor and creator. I'll walk around and tell Instagram stories or shoot video on Twitter, go live on Facebook. But for me, partnering with a storytelling company that really can patch everything all together was that missing piece. And because of that connection that I made at this conference, we were able to make that project a reality. So the film, by that title, 50 States, 100 Days of Film, it's a 22-minute short film that debuted at Social Media Marketing World. We're going to be showing it again at MDMC in 2 weeks up in St. Louis. And it tells the story again of a young man traveling around to all 50 US states and working with these nonprofits and just being all in on trying to share the stories of these organizations whose stories deserve to be told.
That's awesome. And then we're allowed to share out the trailer to everybody that's listening, right?
That's right.
Okay.
I'd love for you guys to check it out. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I can't wait to be in St. I'm going to work to make it down there early that day for during travel to make sure I get to see the premiere, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So the film, again, in a world, Dean, where we put so much on social media, we share everything that we do. I made the decision that we were going to create this film, but we wouldn't actually post it in its entirety on social media. So it's really been a great value add when I travel to conferences or if I offer to go speak at an event somewhere. I say, look, we can put together a little, a coffee event or get some drinks and invite in a group of people to come check out the film. And it's been a great community building experience for those who share that passion of giving back to their home communities.
Right. That's super cool, man. And what's interesting is that when we were talking before the show, it was like, I think we were talking about the early days of Cubs and you were like, well, Jackson, I don't know how old you are. And then he said that and he goes, oh, I'm a little older than you. So now you know how I feel. But the idea, the idea is though, is how did you get started in all this? That's what I want to hear. I want to hear about the Chris got started story.
Yeah, so out of college, I worked at a newspaper in upstate New York in Binghamton, and I was on the copy desk, and I was sort of the youngin in the group, right? I was Jackson's age, and the staff would turn to me as all of these changes in the internet space and the social media space were happening. Right? Like, oh, Chris, can you set up our Facebook page for us? Or can you get us started on Twitter? Or do we need an Instagram? And, as the years went by, I started to think to myself, I think we really need to be all in on this social media thing, this internet thing.
It might really take off.
Yeah, I think there might be a future in this. Seriously. So when you
as you're working at a newspaper.
Working at a newspaper, again, with newsprint, again, my job, Dean, was to design the front page of the paper, to draw out the headlines and, use the pica pole and, fit the pictures and stuff. And so for me, that's been very much a formative part of the experience, right, is identifying where those stories are that need to be told and then recognizing that now the power has shifted. And I think you were saying this before in some of the intro to the show here is, that we're all storytellers. And it's important for all of us to embrace that opportunity to share our stories, whether it's as business people, as influencers, as nonprofits, whatever channel you own now, it's yours. We're no longer beholden to the NBC, ABC, CBS sort of brethren and that sort of monopoly, right? That we all have the opportunity to share our stories. And the real key, Dean, I think, is that consistency, right? And hearing that you guys are approaching 60 episodes with what you're doing here with Social Jack, that's really where the winning starts to come into play, right? As you commit to being a storyteller, you get better, you improve at what you're doing. And obviously, you guys have really fine-tuned the ins and outs of this show, built out an audience, and it's really, really cool to see you guys setting that bar as an example of how a brand can successfully tell stories without needing to rely on the crutch of earned media from the 90s and the 2000s.
Yeah, that's interesting. And we know what's funny is a couple of my big clients were newspapers, and I remember that transition. So I'm reflecting back as you're telling the story about being in the middle of that and them going, is this Facebook thing for real? Should we pay attention to it? And
Yeah.
it's just interesting watching the legacy businesses grab on.
Well, it's been very interesting too, and in full transparency, when I asked Jackson before we came on the air how old he was, I thought he was several years older. And I mean that as a compliment to his, to his maturity and to the experience that he has in this industry. But it's really exciting, to see that next generation coming in natively, right? That folks who are a little bit older like us, we know what it's like to turn the dial on a television, to turn away from the static and get to a channel that actually works, right? And now as this
I
next
don't know what you're
generation
talking about.
fixing the rabbit ears, right?
Yeah,
I remember that.
Get some foil.
But really, it shows if you get started early on and you build relationships authentically and you build them the right way, that you don't need to have 5-10 years of trying to work your way up. That even at a younger age, if you approach your digital persona and you approach your career effectively and you do it intelligently, that even students coming right out of college these days have these incredible opportunities to step into these influencer spaces where we're talking about, again, hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases of budget that's out there if you're positioning your brand the right way to be part of that space.
Yeah, that's amazing. One thing that I'm just proud to be associated with you about is this activity of the nonprofits and things like that you serve. I just think that's my heart goes out, and I just
Thank
appreciate
you.
you for helping all these folks out. How did that part of come into play?
Yeah, so I'll continue the story from before. So worked at a newspaper for quite a while, and then decided to quit my job in 2014 and become a social media influencer. Right, I said I'm going to go on a big road trip around the United States, take some pictures, shoot some video on Snapchat, stuff like that. And basically, I wanted to be Casey Neistat. Right, I wanted to go out and just I was born to be a star and the YouTube attention and all that, right? So I went on a 48-state road trip in the summer of 2014. And when that road trip ended, Dean, I was like, I wasn't emotionally satisfied with how it had gone. So when the following summer rolled around, again, now I was 28, turning 29, I decided I wanted to go again. And I had a transformational volunteer experience with an organization called Pay Away the Layaway in December of 2014 here in South Carolina. And I felt a rush and I felt an emotion in helping families preserve their Christmas experience that I said, I want to do more of that. How can I take this skill that I have, this digital storytelling skill, and how can I parlay that into making this world a better place? How can I do what I do to make a positive change? And I decided to mix together, traveling and road tripping with, digital storytelling along with the nonprofits. And this trifecta came together into what I called 50 States, 100 Days, right? The marketing end of me said, okay, if you're going to do this, you got to make it roll off the tongue, right? So it's one thing to go to 50 states in 266 days. It's another thing to make it really simple, right? Like I met Dean last year and Dean now remembers me as the 50 States, 100 Days guy, right? And that, Dean, has sort of parlayed into, again, you mentioned the book, the film, but even more relevantly now for me in my career, last week I was in San Antonio, Texas, working with a Giving Day. So we raised $4.6 million in 24 hours.
Wow.
With the Big Give San Antonio. Yeah, for over 500 participating nonprofits. And as I mentioned before, I'll be back in St. Louis on May 1st for Give STL Day, which is another one of these regional giving days where all these nonprofits in the community come together and they use online fundraising tools like GiveGab or Civicor to raise, again, millions of dollars in a 24-hour period. And I've sort of kind of settled in as that influencer. I hate using that phrase about myself, but sort of that face on Facebook Live video that tells the stories of what these giving days and what these nonprofits are about. So it's been a multi-year process, Dean. At this point last year, I was not really settled into what my niche was. And now working with these giving days, even in St. Louis during baseball season, right? It is really exciting to have found that opportunity to use my talents to be able to spread the word about these exciting opportunities that are taking place nationwide.
And is there maybe a personal part of the story that of you maybe growing up or something that has caused that emotional connection to helping these people out, or where you were able to make that, wow, this is what I was meant to be? Is there anything, that comes from your roots on that?
Boy, that's a great question. I think it's special for you to be joined here, by your son on your broadcast, and I would give all the credit to my parents as well. My mom especially, and of course my dad is my biggest fan, watching all my live streams and everything. I wouldn't be surprised if he's listening in today. But my parents, Dean, I like to root it back to being raised the right way, right, and understanding as this social media shift has happened, all of this attention that has come my way over the last few years, I really embrace and enjoy the opportunity to use my voice to give back and to contribute to those who are really in need, right? Like if I'm having a rough go of it, like I've been sick the last couple of days, that's nothing compared to the struggles that a lot of these organizations are going through. That's a big part of the story that's told in 50 States, 100 Days is like, I tried to do something bigger than myself to bring more attention to the Boys and Girls Club of Cheyenne, Big Brothers, Big Sisters of South Central West Virginia, and the YMCA, that if I'm blessed with these gifts, I want to leave this earth. I want to be remembered as someone who left this earth and who left this industry ultimately as a better place than when we entered it. And there's a lot of wackiness. There's a lot of, BS and stuff that happens sometimes in the influencer space, in the social media space. I like being, and you referenced the yellow hat and everything too, but I like trying to be a beacon of positivity. Both if you find me on social media or if you see me at the Strategy Summit or you see me at MDMC, I want you to feel happy and to feel like, yes, there are people out there that are doing things that are trying to make this country a better place.
Yeah, no, and again, I applaud you for that. I'm just so inspired and connected to that. We have sort of a part that we don't talk about on Social Jack much, where we go into schools and we take our adult version of Social Jack, and about 5-6 years ago, maybe even longer, I created a digital citizenship version for schools. So, I grew up alone on the streets, and sort of, my parents, did the best they could with what we had. And I am so connected. Like, we have a great charity client slash charity that we support here in Chicago called the Harbor. Anything that for me, I feel connected, where people need just a break. They just need a chance. And I was blessed where I was just either created or given opportunity along the way. So I love any of the ones like Big Sisters and Big Brothers and all these groups that help those that are less fortunate. So that's my connection here to you with these, is that I'm like, wow, man,
Yeah.
I feel like you're helping me out by helping them out.
It's been really exciting, and to be able to meet a lot of these people in real life. And a lot of the times we see on video some of the stories that are being told, but for me personally, it strikes me to again, I think this was after we met, Dean, that I went on a 25-state road trip with the Salvation Army. If you want to turn it back to the influencer space, but I was assigned to be a Red Kettle ambassador for the Salvation Army in November and December of 2017. And I went on a 25-state road trip from Houston to Manhattan and visited Salvation Army locations and volunteered and worked with, even there in Chicagoland, out in Elk Grove Village is where I visited, the disaster relief center out there in Chicago, but all the way up the Midwest, back down to New Orleans and Jacksonville, Florida, and then all the way back up to New York City. And we actually won an award from PR News last spring for this work with the Salvation Army. And the story was featured on NBC Universal. It was on today.com. We had all the vlogs up there. So it was really great to be able to apply some of these, we talk about 50 States, 100 Days being sort of a kid chasing a dream, if you will, but being able to partner with the Richards Group out of Dallas and then with the Salvation Army, which is based out of Washington, D.C., and visit, again, 25 states, to be able to shake people's hands, to be able to say thank you for the work that you do, and to be able to share their stories through vlogging and through Instagram stories and all those different mediums. boy, is it impactful work when you get the opportunity to step in and do it.
Yeah, that's super cool, man. Super cool. So just switching a little bit. I swear when I met you at SMSS, it seemed like you were hot and heavy with Snapchat at the time, right? And doing some Instagram stories on that side of things, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I consider myself relatively platform agnostic. I was listening in on the opening to the show with Kate and everybody about the importance of being on multiple platforms. I very much follow that same philosophy, right? That I kind of look at the different social media channels as maybe different parts of the individual funnel, if you will. I've spent a lot more time recently on Twitter, because of the opportunity to connect with more people, and that discoverability. But I think Instagram stories and Snapchat represent a great opportunity for people to really understand who you are and connect with you on a daily, day-to-day level. Again, Dean, I mentioned that this week, I've been feeling a little bit under the weather, and I got dozens of messages, sometimes some of them from people that I had connected with years ago who had never even reached out, that were like, dude, we need you. Like your story represents so much to me, that you're this guy who's chasing his dream. And more importantly, you're doing it to try and improve the lives of others. That all happens. That's the magic of Instagram stories, right? That I'm here having a little stomach bug, and I've just got dozens of people saying, dude, like, get back up on your feet because we need you. And that's incredible.
Rub some dirt on it, Chris. Come on, let's go.
Yeah. Slap some tussin on it, right? Like Chris Rock would say, like, get back on your feet because, again, we joke about the yellow hat and everything, but it's really cool when your brand starts to represent, other people and, their hopes and dreams as well. And I'm really, really flattered, that people have those kind of things to say, in that feedback on Instagram stories.
Yeah, and we have folks here that are, business owners, solopreneurs. We have people that work at organizations, and I think one of the toughest things is to pick and choose your audiences on on the platforms. It gets confusing. They change all the time. It's hard to keep up with. Sort of the vision that we created with Social Jack being having an academy where people could learn, and I see you're teaching as well, which I think is awesome. I was like, yes, he's got his own school and academy going. I think that's
yep.
And so in doing this, what sort of words of wisdom do you have for people? Like you and I were talking before the show about how Twitter has become, I said, what's your new go-to? And you said, man, I'm really loving Twitter lately. Like you found a new love for it. So can you take us through that a little bit? Like how that decision?
Yeah. Again, I love Twitter because of, again, the searchability of it, right? Like, let's say we connected at a conference a few years ago or something like that. There's going to be proof of that relationship. We talk about CRMs all the time. There's opportunities to connect publicly and to be able to draw out that relationship over a series of years. There's the opportunity through Twitter as well to be able to connect with other people at events. That my big break in the industry. Again, I keep referencing my friend Dan Gingiss, who, if you guys don't know him, you absolutely should. He's based there in Chicago as well. But my first big break at the industry came at a social media conference called the Social Shakeup, which I will also be speaking at again this year in Atlanta in just about a month. So I'm excited to go back there. But we were tweeting at the same time about a panel about millennials that didn't have any millennials on it, and we connected over this joke. And now Dan and I are like best friends. So Dan actually opened the door for me to go work as a social media consultant with Humana. Dan also opened the door for me to become a contributor to Forbes, which just happened in the last 6 weeks or so.
I saw that. Congratulations. Yeah.
Which is super cool. And Dan also really lobbied for me to speak for my first time at Social Media Marketing World, as Dan has been a multi-year contributor to that event as well. So Dean, when we talk about the friendships that can take place through these social media connections, it's really real. And to get back to answer your specific question, I think the real key to managing these different platforms, at least for me personally, has been to just be yourself, no matter which platform you're on. Yeah. Right. So for me, if you connect with me on Twitter, you find me on Instagram, you find me even on LinkedIn or on YouTube or on Facebook, or more importantly, Dean, you find me in Chicago at the Social Media Strategy Summit, I'm going to be the exact same person that you see offline and online, no matter where you find me. Right? That has been my brand promise to all of my followers across all of my channels. And I think that makes sense for all of the businesses out there that are listening as well, is that you want to represent the same way if someone walks into your brick and mortar store, or if they place an order online and they're chatting with you on the phone, you want that same positive customer experience to be reflected across all of your different social media channels. Forget for a moment your content strategy and think about the experience that you're giving to your users, to your listeners, to your audience. That to me has always been paramount, is when you see me, you're going to get Chris at that same energy level, that same enthusiasm level, and that same style from one platform to the other, to the other, to the other. And I tell you what, Dean, that really lifts a lot of that pressure off of being an influencer or representing a business, to try and think of different personas for different channels.
Yeah,
kind of my secret sauce,
Yeah, I agree with that. We have a tough time sometimes when we have a 90 days to influence program where we take influencers from wherever they're at to a next level for whatever's next for them. And as we're doing their intake, we ask a lot of personal questions. We like to know, how did you grow up? And we just want to go deep and find out the real interesting things, because we're all unique, and I think that's why I do this. I love the uniqueness of each individual that we meet. I just think it feeds my soul, and it fascinates me how different we all are, and how connected we are too, so in the same sense.
And I think it's always helpful to hear kind of where each one of those influencers, where somebody is coming from and what their goals are, what they're trying to accomplish, right? For me, I was voted in high school most likely to be remembered, and this was before, again, I know Jackson's still listening, but hey man, there was no Facebook when I was in high school. You know what I mean? There was no Twitter back in those days, so for me,
there was a MySpace though, right? There was a MySpace.
I think MySpace was coming around. We would have been top friends, I'm sure. But wanting to leave a positive impact on the world, right? Yeah. And trying to leave your mark and trying to leave a legacy. I'm sure you think the same way about your life and your career, Dean. I know your legacy is at least listening there, on the broadcast as well. But the importance of leaving a positive mark on the world is something that's always been very important to me, no matter which format, whether it's 50 States, 100 Days, or the Salvation Army, or working with some other brands over the years. I've always just wanted to leave that positive sort of feeling in people's minds after they meet or listen to or see me.
Absolutely. And that's why we still go into the schools and churches and stuff and teach those kids. I want to, I want to be that voice to that one child in the audience that really is lost, that feels alone, that may not have anywhere else to go. To know that there's a whole world out here of people that care about that can care about you, and our whole theme here is social teaming, like we do here, Chris, with you. You're part of our community now, whether you like it or not. You're part of our community. But it's about that connectedness, so that we don't feel so isolated in those parts of our journey when we have the toughest moments. And I think that's important for people to hear on a repetitive basis. And I love the fact that you say consistency is greater than frequency. So consistently knowing that you can be yourself everywhere you go. And taking that, you said, take the pressure off, which I love. So when did you realize that was oh, I don't have to be a different person on here anymore?
Dean, I think that, again, I talked a little bit about the mental transition back in 2014 to 2015. That I really had this misperception about the social media industry and what it meant to be successful and what it meant to be an influencer, to be honest with you, back in that summer, right? That I think I had some things right when I quit my day job, in terms of the marketing element of it. And again, if you're listening or you're watching this interview, keep an eye out, because I think sometime in the next maybe 6 months to a year, I'd love to maybe even write a book about this idea of road trip marketing. I think it's a fascinating concept and a great way to bring our country together, or maybe even another country together in the future. So from the marketing end, I think I had my screws in the right place. But from a mental, from a philosophical end of it, I don't know that when I went on that trip in 2014 that I had my goals in the right place.
Yeah.
And then again, working with Pay Away the Layaway and envisioning this 50 states, 100 days trip. I think that few months really represented a sort of a sea change in my mind where I said, wow, I think we can really impact some people in a really positive way. Again, there's no one moment when you realize you get it right or wrong. And I still don't think, and Dean, you could interview me in 5 years from now, and I'll tell you, I'll give you the same answer, that we're still experimenting and trying to figure out exactly what it looks like. But I tell you what, having become a Forbes contributor now and being a LinkedIn Live ambassador and speaking at Social Media Marketing World and partnering with these giving days and getting paid well to do so. And, there's never that one day when you wake up and you realize like, okay, now this is success. I've made it, and I'm sure you would say that too as a business owner, but
right.
It's the growth and it's that change that happens over a period of time that really makes a big difference. And I'm just really grateful to be able to share some of that change with people, because I know that the people that have been watching me, especially those that have been watching since 14, 15, 16, have seen that change in me as well. And my only hope, Dean, to add one more point to this, is that someday, I'll be a father as well, and I'll be able to, as you mentioned, because I know you think of your family, as you're expressing those thoughts as well, to be able to join you in that fatherhood club, to be able to pass those lessons forward and really direct that energy onto a child or two or three.
Absolutely. And all I can tell you is it's not as easy as it looks.
Jackson, I'm sure, is laughing at us right now.
Or crying, one of the two. So tell us, some of the influencers that come to mind, because, in our journey, right? So we always have this journey of our life and we're at this moment. Some of the people that have sort of helped along the way, or maybe they're still mentors of yours, just give us a little snippet of that, if you would. Like people that—
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, how many hours do we have left? I mean, I could go on and on. That's really what this industry to me is all about, is people reaching down and offering that hand to help you. Of course, I mentioned Dan Gingiss, but I would also be remiss not to mention Ryan Pena, who I know is, again, a close friend of you guys.
Yep.
Ryan was actually the guy who, again, in full transparency, I said, Ryan, I'd love to speak at the Social Media Strategy Summit. And he said, okay, let me place a phone call and see if I can make that happen. And then poof, I appeared in Chicago, and that's how it works, right? Is we connect with people, on Twitter. I connected with Ryan initially on Snapchat and just built that relationship over the years. I love giving credit to folks like Brian Fanzo, who's been a huge supporter of mine over the years, based out of Washington, D.C. And I take a lot of my learnings from Brian. Someone like Roberto Blake, who is just a sort of an oracle in the YouTube space and just has been incredibly influential to me. Someone like Mario Armstrong, the host of the Never Settle show, based out of Baltimore. Mario is just an unbelievable guy who just wants to give back at every single turn. Again, there's too many to name in the format here that we have. I've written a lot of articles. A lot of my subject matter and my content over the years, Dean, has been, here's 75 influencers that you should follow, or here's 56 female speakers to bring on stage, right? And so I love using my voice to lift up others like Bella Vasta and like Stephanie Liu, like Miri Rodriguez from Microsoft. And there's tons of content out there with my name on it that talks about these other speakers, because I feel oftentimes that the world doesn't need more of me. You know what I mean? I'm a white cisgender heterosexual male from Long Island. I want to be able to use my voice and use my influence to bring forth more diversity to these stages. That's why I love attending events like MDMC that really emphasize that diversity. Again, the social shakeup this year, tons of African-American speakers, LGBTQ speakers. It's really beautiful to see the industry starting to come around and represent more of what our country really looks like, and I'm happy to try and use my voice to be on the forefront of that effect as well.
Yeah, and I always like the feel or the one world feel to everything. You know, it's just we're all humans, right? We always talk about human to human here. So, I like that aspect of what you said there.
Absolutely.
Any resources or tools that you use that you just think are super slick as part of your world or your work?
Boy, so for those who attended Social Media Marketing World, the tool that I really spoke extensively about in my session is called Twitonomy. It's an app that you can download, or you can go to twitonomy.com. And I've really used that to analyze, again, as it relates to influencers, the influence that people have on one another on Twitter. So if I were to pull up Twitonomy and look up your individual Twitter handles, if I were to look up at Dean Delisle on Twitonomy, I could see who is engaging with you. I could see who you're engaging with, how often you're engaging with them, what days of the week, what times of day, what hashtags you're using in the terms of that engagement. So again, to tie it back to Twitter, there's just so much data out there on the API that allows us to see who those connections are. I use Twitonomy more than any other app these days. Again, there's other apps out there like Hash Tracking. Brand24 is another good one where you can really do some research into who the influencers are in your space. So as it relates to the campaigns that I've been working on, like the Big Give and Give STL Day, I'll be using those tools to really look into which accounts are driving the conversation and helping us bring those campaigns to a larger audience. And from a software perspective, let me give you one more. I use a tool called Switcher Studio, which is a great app. Switcher Studio. They're based out of Louisville, Kentucky, so right down the road from you guys as well. And Switcher is a third-party app that allows you to create interactive and engaging live video on the spot. So if you've seen my LinkedIn Live broadcast or even some of my Facebook broadcasts where we put up like the names on the bottom of the screen, or we're able to bring on multiple cameras. Again, there's a million different apps that you can do this with, but Switcher allows you to do it right from your cell phone. And it allows you to, again, play B-roll. It allows you to put up infographics and photos. And it's been a really great hack for someone who's not very technologically advanced, like Jackson is there on the back end, to create this high quality interactive video that really allows you to grab people's attention on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, thank you so much for that. You know what's interesting about that is, as we were just talking about this on the production side, because you do a lot of video as well, and it's funny how many things, we used to spend thousands of dollars for software and equipment, and now so much of the stuff now that you can get is actually reasonable, and people that want to produce their own shows and do their own things, I just almost can't wait. I can't wait to see where it goes next. Like it seems like there's a new thing a day coming out almost.
Yeah, Dean, I've been very bullish, over the years of live streaming video on the importance of it becoming, of these features becoming mainstream, right? So of course we're recording here on Zoom and we're able to show different cameras and stuff like that. And that's great. But for a lot of brands and businesses, even downloading an app like Zoom and broadcasting through Zoom can be a stumbling block. Right. So when Facebook introduced natively the opportunity to bring in a guest, I thought that was enormous. Yes. Right. And we're
and share a screen. They let you share a screen.
And share a screen. Right. So all of these things now that we know how to do, right? We're very proficient in working with apps like BeLive and StreamYard and all of this stuff. As Facebook continues to absorb and continues to internalize those mechanisms where you can put comments on the screen, where you can put up lower thirds. I think we're going to see even more of a renaissance in the live video space because it's going to become even easier for those mom and pop shops to create content that is actually watchable and drives that conversation over the course of a period of time.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, wow, Chris, man, I just, I'm afraid to go any further because I'm like so enriched by what I've gotten out of you so far. So I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I sort of want to tap into the audience here and sort of know what their one takeaway is. And then this is the time when we like to bring Kate and Jackson back to get their perspective. We have a couple generations going on here, so I always like to know what inspires people from different lenses. So,
Sure.
Kate, what did you get out of this episode?
So one of the things I love the most about how passionate Chris is about what he talks about and how everything is just so authentically him. And I love that he talked about when you Google him on all platforms, how it's all consistent, because we talk about that a lot with our clients, not just like influencers or business influencers, but company pages, Google, like everywhere. And it's so important to check in on your brand as it changes and evolves, because we know that it does. So I love that you're authentically you, like across all platforms. And another key thing that we're seeing come up so often in a lot of different spaces right now is being involved in things that align in your values. So whether that's just becoming part of an organization that aligns in your value, whether it's spear hunting a mission that aligns in your values the way you are, or just joining a company. If you're working for a company that doesn't have the same values as you, it becomes draining. So I love that. Right. Something that you've made a part of your mission. And I think that it's something that we can all incorporate in our everyday lives. And I know it's become a lot more important to me recently.
Yeah, that's a good call, Kate. I love that. And Jackson, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, essentially the same thing. I really liked how he talked about, you don't have to be a different person over here than you are over here. The consistency among all platforms. Personally, I really liked that he mentioned, live video functions on Facebook, and that the live video on all platforms is really growing and taking off, and that's what everything is really moving to, and it's more accessible to smaller brands. You don't have to be a Nike, Adidas, or one of those big Fortune 500 companies in order to produce these videos, these captivating videos. And thank you for sharing those tools, because there's so many tools these days that there's no way that one person knows all of them. Right. So I love hearing when people, especially when they have to do with video, those are my favorite. I'm gonna nerd out, but yeah, that's probably good. And I was laughing when you said that. I was probably laughing on the back end. I was cracking up hysterically. So,
Chris, yeah. Chris, you're going to be coming up at MDMC, Midwest Digital Marketing Conference in St. Louis. Let's see, Social Rock Conference, which I didn't even really had one in Rockford, which is an appropriate name. Social Media Week in Ohio, Social Media Day in Houston. Any other shout outs you want to give of conferences coming up?
Boy, I think that pretty much runs the gamut there. I'm going to be all around you guys over the next couple of months there.
You're going to have us surrounded. Yeah.
I know I'm coming in from all sides. I really just got to make my way to Wrigley at some point this year. It's been a lot of fun, and I really do appreciate you guys having me on the show. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And Jackson, who's our winners today? We always have a couple winners, Chris. I think we're all winners, but so Jackson, who's the winners in today's show?
Yeah, so for on the Zoom platform, we have Jeff Steitley, who won the engagement prize. So make sure you check your email after the show. And then also our good friend Carla Bowles was on the Facebook live stream, and she is our Facebook engagement winner. So
all right. So here's what we ask each and every audience member, including the people that win the Starbucks gift cards. We want you to be a thought leader today and share what you've learned from Chris. Whether it was inspired by the charities, whether it was some methodologies that he used, maybe it was just his personal story. But I want you to share that with somebody so that you can help guide and inspire somebody else in your world to sort of take themselves to the next level. So we ask that of each and every one of you. And congratulations, Jeff, who is actually a really old friend and family of the program from way back before I didn't even think, probably 5 names ago, and Carla over the last year. So good to see a couple of friends in the game there. But you're all friends to us. Thank you so much, Chris, for being on with us today. And from all of us here at Social Jack, our heart goes out to your heartwarming work. And just want to thank you from all of us here.
Hey, Dean, can't wait to shake your hand in a couple of weeks down in St. Louis. And I'm sure our paths will cross again soon. Thanks so much for having me on.
You got it. Take care, everybody. We'll see you all online.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you for listening to the Influence Factory podcast. We welcome feedback and suggestions. You can provide these by visiting our website at www.myinfluencefactory.com. And if you are interested in Social Jack's 90 Days to Influence program, you can simply go to 90daystobusinessinfluence.com and simply ask for the next steps. While our program airs regularly on Zoom webcasts and Facebook Live on Wednesdays at noon Central, we invite you to download episodes on your favorite channel: YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spreaker, SoundCloud, and who knows where else in the future. We will also provide occasional on-location live streams with special guests that we will announce in our community Facebook group, Business Influencer Alliance, as well as on all Social Jack channels. Our mission is to help you build your digital business influence with this podcast, as well as inspire, educate, and entertain those who are hungry to collaborate in a cool place with cool business professionals just like you.